All right, from the Student Fairfax City, we are very grateful that Natacha Atlas accepted our invitation to our show. Natacha, welcome to my humble podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. Natacha, let's go back to the beginning. How did you start in music? You came from a family that was musically oriented or anything like that?
There was a few people in my family that were musically connected, I suppose, or musically active. I had two uncles who were playing music, who were teaching music, and I think that I just kind of got into it because I was always interested in the arts. I was interested in dance, in theatre, and in music from a young age. My mother always tells me a story. Well, she did, but she's when she was alive, my mother used to tell me a story of when we went to the Isle of Wight festival. She went to see Jimi Hendrix and all these people, because my mother was a hippie, and I think it was in 1970 in the Isle of Wight, and I do remember vaguely this, where it was a huge festival in the Isle of Wight, and there was these little stages all around where, you know, people would be playing music, and there was a band, and I was 6 and 6 or 7, and I got up on stage, and the band were playing this pop song at the time, which was called "Where's Your Mama Gone?" and I started singing the chorus of "Where's Your Mama Gone?" but I didn't remember the lyrics, so I kept singing "Where's your mama gone? Where's your mama gone?" and I sang that for about 5 minutes, and then my mum said, "Right, come on, off you get off the stage now," because I couldn't remember the rest of the lyrics. So yeah, I think I've always been into music in some way or form. Yeah, when I was about 16, I think I started to experiment with music, with doing, you know, singing and trying different styles.
Where were you born? Because I think you were born in Belgium, but you ended up moving overseas, right? For your parents?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I was born in Belgium, but we moved a lot when I was a child. So I was in so many different schools and moving around. In the end, we settled for a while in Sussex in England. I went to a boarding school, a Rudolf Steiner boarding school, whose ideas are very slightly Rosicrucian, slightly mystical. And I was at that boarding school for some of my childhood, and then moved around again. And when I left school, I did travel around a lot. I lived in Greece for a while. I mean, as a teenager and a young kid, I went to Egypt to visit some of my family, sometimes in the winter, sometimes in the summer. And but then when I got into music and I was about 18, I lived in Greece for a year, traveled to Turkey, and I was kind of busking, singing with 1 or 2 other musicians occasionally, but just in restaurants or in cafes or on the street, you know, just busking. And then finally, I ended up back in London, and I joined a group called Jar Wobble and Invaders of the Heart, and I was in that for a couple of years. And then after that, there was a record label called Nation Records, doing, I suppose you could have called it sort of fusion world music, but it was very sort of, it was dance music, it was electronic, but mixing all these influences. And because of the Peter Gabriel Real World festival and the world music thingy, the whole genre was called world music, which at the time I think served a purpose, because it was a way to explain to people that it wasn't rock and roll, or it wasn't mainstream pop music, Western pop music. So it was a way to express that it was something to do with things from different cultures. But I think that after a while, the term world music was a little bit limiting, because it didn't express the various things that were happening that were experimental with electronics and stuff like that. So I think it started out as world music, but it gradually morphed into other things, and so but I carried on anyway with experimenting with different with different elements of so-called world music, or for me the Arabic side of music. I was experimenting with electronic elements, and then I kind of went into a very acoustic phase for probably over 10 years. I went into a non-electronic. I went into classical and acoustic music, because I felt that I needed to learn some things that predated electronic music.
Got it. How difficult was it at the beginning? I mean, your early 20s, before you began, before you released your first album, and then working with more famous musicians, when you were in the ages, I don't know, 20 to 25 or so, it was very difficult to make it, I imagine, and you didn't give up. You continue. This is my life. This is my career. This is what I want to do, and you keep pushing. And especially that you speak several languages, right?
Yeah, and I think that when you're young, when you're in your 20s and everything, you have a fire in you that is sometimes it feels like you can do anything, and that you have no limits, and you're not thinking about, you're not doing it to earn a living. You're doing it because it's a passion, because you're compelled to do it for some reason. And so you're fueled very much by that. So but in that time, doing anything that was in different languages, if you were in England, it wasn't very well accepted, because people, I think, were less open-minded. In a way, there were musicians like Ananda Shankar and John McLaughlin and Ravi Shankar and musicians that were especially in the jazz as well. I think they were fusing music with musicians from India and stuff. So I think that helped to open up people's minds about how far music can go. That really music shouldn't really have any borders or boundaries. It's an expression of the times. It's expression of emotions. It's expressions of art. So it shouldn't really be limited. But in the 80s, I think it was, and so and I was just trying to find my way of expressing what I felt I needed to express, which was my duality of the East and the West, in a sense. I wanted to make music for people like me, and for people that could speak more than one language, and I mean, my mum was very much into eclectic music, but I think she loved Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix, but I lean more towards, music from the East, and I wanted to somehow incorporate that with everything that I had grown up with. So it took a while. Yeah, it took a while to kind of find other people that had the same mindset as me.
Gotcha. How do you end up joining the Transglobal Underground? You knew who they were, and you need to go to an audition. They knew your work at the time, because that was early in your career.
Yeah, they'd heard about me because I'd sung for nearly 2 years with Jarre Wobble and the Invaders of the Heart, which was he was the bass player from Public Image, which was a sort of a punk band at the time in the 80s. I think it could even have been the 70s, but in the 80s he was in a group called Public Image, and then he got into world music. He got into experimenting with Arabic sounds, and so I had to audition for the Jarre Wobble band, and then I got in, and I was touring with him for a couple of years, and then Nation Records, who knew Jarre Wobble, they were the link with Transglobal Underground, and Transglobal Underground had heard about me, and they'd heard my singing on the Jarre Wobble album. So they'd invited me to come and do a couple of sessions for their album, which was, I think, their first album. And they were very much a collective, and they were very kind of a group. They were very open-minded and they wanted to experiment with electronics and try and do drum and bass with Arabic and Indian sounds. And I got on with them immediately. We had a rapport, and so and the introduction was through Nation Records, and Nation Records was a label that the main guy who started it was an Asian guy. He was from the north of England, Aki Nawaz, and he was Pakistani origin, but he had a group called Fundamental, which was kind of rap music with a lot of Asian sounds, a lot of Indian and Asian sounds, and so he was actually performing as well, but he had this label, and he was putting out I think Talvin Singh was there was some releases by Talvin Singh, who was this amazing tabla player at the time. He I think he was very present with Nation Records for in the early 90s, and he was putting out his own albums, and I worked with him a couple of times as well through Nation Records. So Nation Records were very much the introduction to lots of different artists, but mainly Transglobal, and I joined Transglobal, and then we were touring for quite a lot of years, and doing quite a lot of albums, and then finally they said, let's do your solo album. So then they helped me to do my first solo album, which was called Diaspora.
That was in 95, right?
94, maybe 94, 95, yeah. I think. Yeah. I have to have a look at the CD and it will tell me.
Yeah, I think it's 95. And and then so you released your first album in 1994, 95, and then what happened with your musical career? That release and that record did open more doors for you?
Yeah, I mean, we were busy already touring as Transglobal Underground,
Yeah.
and I was one of the lead singers in Transglobal Underground, and there were two rappers in the group as well.
Mm.
So we were already touring all the time with Transglobal, and then when Diaspora got released, we found we would be doing a tour with Transglobal Underground, and we would finish that tour, and then immediately we would be on tour with my solo album. So it was very, very busy, and yes, it did open a lot of doors, especially in France, because we followed that album up with another album called Halim. I think it was Halim, and again that was very well received. And then on my third album, which was called Gedida, which means new in Arabic, in Egyptian Arabic, I had a hit with a cover version of a French song, originally sung by Françoise Hardy, called Mon Amie la Rose, which we did with we did this French song which was very popular in France, because they knew it, because it was sung by Françoise Hardy in the 60s, in 1964. I think it was a hit then, but it became an even bigger hit with my version, because I did this sort of arabesque friendly version, because the rhythm was an Arabic rhythm, but we programmed it up, so we were using samples and electronic beats to express the Arabic rhythm. So it was a very modern representation of this Arabic rhythm. And then the song itself, Mon Amie la Rose, it has the melody is very lyrical, and the poetry is kind of a bit reminiscent of Arabic poetry. So it worked very well in France, especially amongst the North African Arabic population in France, who still talk about it today. You know, I still still on YouTube. I get in 2024. I'm still listening to Mon Amie la Rose, and it's very nice that I still get those compliments. Yeah, it's nice. Although I don't perform it very much anymore, because since then, when I went into acoustic music and I left the electronic music behind, I went into jazz. I did acoustic Arabic music for a long time. As I said, I left electronic music because I felt that I needed to learn from music that predated electronic music. And so it was, in a way, a study time, but I was releasing albums as well, acoustically. And then when I teamed up with a musician called Sami Bichet, who's half Egyptian, half English, who's an amazing programmer, but he's actually a violin player. First and foremost, he's a violinist. And he's he was classically trained, and is a real improviser. So his big love of music was firstly jazz, but then because he grew up in Alexandria, he listened to everything. So I teamed up with him because he joined the acoustic group that I was in for a while, and then we went kind of quite deep into jazz, which was something I didn't really know anything about. That was, again, acoustic music as well, but it was a jazz, so it was fairly new to me, because it has one thing in common with Arabic music, which is improvisation, but jazz is about harmony and changes. So so that for me was again it was like going through a brand new door, a brand new universe really of music.
It seemed to be that your life has always been torn between the East and the West, Latin music, Arabic music, learn different cultures. It's like a house with a lot of different doors, right? And then
Yeah.
you go to, I don't know, the first floor, the second floor. You want to do some acoustic, you want to do more Arabic, Egyptian, and so on and so forth, which is great because a lot of musicians will have the voice yours, right? But they they cannot go into all different avenues that you have on in your life. Which is in a way is great. When somebody will say, describe Natacha Atlas, she's a combination of a lot of different things because when she was in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, and so she had done, which is great. I mean, you have an unbelievable background, Natasha. Yeah, I know you're very humble and you don't like to talk that much about yourself, but for on the other side, I'm a listener, right? I'm a listener of your art, right? I'm a connoisseur of your music, right? And has given me music, like I told you before, has given me so much satisfaction in my life, basically through my dad, right? My dad loved jazz, so it's great to have people like you, in the world. We live in crazy time with, Russia, Ukraine war and Palestine and Israel and this and that. We live in crazy times, so we need more Natasha's music.
Yeah, it's these are, I think, quite unprecedented
Yeah.
times. What's happening worldwide. There's a French philosopher called Albert Camus, and he always said, "Tous les États sont criminels." And actually, what we're seeing in the world right now is that all governments are criminal, all governments are complicit. Because for me, obviously, being part Egyptian, I feel very close to what's happening in the Middle East and Palestine particularly. It's being completely destroyed, and I just think that the Western governments are completely complicit because they could have stopped it. And this genocide is absolutely horrendous. It's worse. It's probably the worst catastrophic failure of the 21st century. Horrifically shameful. A complete failure of Western civilization to do anything about it, and actually probably the whole world. And what we're seeing is that I think more than ever before, we are seeing the complete blatant criminality of all governmental systems, all governance. And it's flagrant. I mean, I've in all my years, I've never seen anything quite like this, and it's quite disturbing, and it's also the censorship that we're experiencing now. I mean, I was shadow banned because I was doing a lot of posts on Twitter for Free Palestine, and there's a lot of Zionist propaganda, and it's everything is geared towards normalizing genocide. So I feel particularly strongly about that, and it's been very hard to feel inspired because we're actually, Sammy and I are working on a new album, and I'm going back to electronic music.
Yep.
For the first time in probably 15 years, I'm going back to electronic music. I had one during COVID. I did an EP, which was electronic. Was electronic music. It was called The Inner and the Outer, but it was a small release, and it's on Spotify and on Bandcamp, and it was an independent release. It was the first time I've done something completely independently of any label, and so we released that during COVID. I think it was maybe 2020 or 2021.
Yep.
And but then, of course, I was still in the jazz. I had released a jazz album called Strange Days, and the days just keep getting stranger. Anyway, this album, Strange Days, we were touring that for during COVID, but it was very difficult. So we haven't toured it a lot. So it's been out for about since October 2019. So then my agent said it was time to record a new album. So Sammy and I decided to go back to electronic music. So we're currently writing some demos and trying to and programming up some beats and stuff like that. And it's great, but at the same time, we're feeling very. There are days when I have writer's block because there's so much that I want to say and so much that I feel I'll be censored about, and so it's really, I'm finding it very hard actually to get this album together. It will happen, but it's taking longer than I would like, and I think it's because I have been personally very affected with what's going on around the world. It's challenging.
I want peace in the world. Maybe we, maybe as a human civilization, I don't know, we are doomed. Maybe we will destroy ourselves. Maybe, I don't know. I hope not. But music and poetry and art and going to museum. It's so beautiful, being on the outside. I'm very lucky that I do this from the house, the garden of my house, but at the same time, I'm aware that a lot of people are suffering in the world, and it's one conflict over another, one side of another, politics, and here issues in the United States too. We are going to election soon, and hopefully. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but I think maybe as a human society, maybe we are doomed, and we'll kill one another. One crazy person that will push a button, and then we'll all die. I don't know. It's
yeah. I mean,
I want peace. I want.
Yeah. I mean, I still have some hope, but I think what it's going to take is it's going to take more people to wake up to the reality that there's no difference between Democratic and Republican. They're both the same. It's all about those people who are greedy and just want power, and they're only serving themselves. They are not serving the people. And I'm not advocating communism. No, we have to find a new way because this system isn't working. So actually, it has to break down. And ordinary people need to unite more and actually not comply with the governments, because also what happened in COVID was very, very badly mismanaged, and there was a lot of tyranny going on there as well. So I think basically there is hope, but people need to wake up more to the fact that governance is not working, and there's no difference. There's no difference between Biden and Trump. They're just trying to get everything for themselves. It's just all about power and greed. It's all about money and control. They want to control us so that they can keep everything for themselves. And they're all liars. And as long as people wake up to that fact, maybe we can find another way, because the old system is not working.
No, I agree with you. Yeah. And let's go back to music. In 1991, you end up collaborating with Daniel Ash, right?
Yeah.
He was a very well-known musician as well. You know,
Yeah.
working with Bauhaus and so forth. So,
Mm. Yeah, I remember that.
What memories do you have from that?
Well, because I lived in a town called Northampton for a while because my mother was living there, so I would visit her. And after I left the school in East Grinstead in Sussex, I stayed with her for a while, and I met Bauhaus because they lived in Northampton. Yeah, and then in 91, and Daniel and I stayed friends for a long time, and I was also really good friends with Kevin Haskins, the drummer, whom we're still in contact. You know, because sometimes I go to the States. I haven't been now for about 7 years, and I really love to visit. But so in 91, with Daniel Ash, he wanted to do his own solo album, and he had this song, and I played bass on it, and he had this little Latin idea, which was slightly based on the Tito Puente kind of this little sort of he called it Walk This Way, the single, and the video to it, and I played bass on that, and it had a very Latin feel with congas, and that was really good fun. We did a video to it, and I did a little bit of dancing on it, belly dancing, and then he did another song on the solo album, and I did backing vocals for that. Yeah. So I did that because we were friends for a long time, so it was fun to do that with him.
Yeah, that's great. That's great for you. In 1999, you end up collaborating with David Arnold on the song "One Brief Moment," right? And also was an important track as well. Because with the James Bond movies, kind of was played everywhere at the time, right? So.
Yeah, so I knew David Arnold for a few years, and the first time I met him, he asked me to do some little bits of singing on some of the James Bond films, just incidental singing on the score, and I had experience doing that kind of work. At the time, sometimes you'd be in a studio booth and you'd have the screen of the scene that you're singing to, which sometimes really helped. And so because we'd met doing some of those things, then he approached me to ask me to sing on an album that he was doing of various James Bond theme songs. And so I did that. I did a cover of From Russia with Love. And then we collaborated on my album. We did a couple of songs. And then one of the songs that I had done for his album of James Bond's songs was called You Only Live Twice. And we did a version of that, which ended up on one of my singles for, I think that album was for Gadida. It was on, I don't think it was on the album, but we did an EP and it was on that. And he was great to work with. He's a real nice guy and a great character. And I remember that sometimes he would be in the studio, or he would be in LA and he was working on a score for the James Bond movie that some of the ones that he was working on. And sometimes he would call me up in the middle of the night because he had writer's block. and he would be like, I don't know what to do. I'm not coming up with anything. And it's just the thing that happens to musicians. And we all, as musicians and composers and singers, we all understand that feeling of anxiety because you're not getting anywhere and you have a deadline. So, he'd call me up and I'd really understand what he was going through. But of course, he'd always deliver. In the end, at some point, something happens, something clicks, and then everything starts to flow. But there can be times when it can be very difficult. And I remember with him, he would have that, and I felt honored that he would call me and he would want to talk to me, just to sort of, it helps to talk to other musicians and other artists when you're having that writer's block. But we've all been there. So that was my experience of David Arnold. He's a real cool cat and a great composer. I haven't actually seen him for a few years now, and I hope he's doing well.
Gotcha. In some almost 25 years ago, you ended up collaborating with Jean-Michel Jarre on the track C'est la vie. Also a very famous person. What memory do you have from there? Are you still in touch with him? He's still doing a lot of work, even conference playing.
I've tried to find him, but I'm not very good with social media. I tend to lose things, and I had my Instagram hacked 2 weeks ago. I can't get in because I did message him on Instagram, and I think his assistant got back to me. But the thing is, since 2.5 weeks now, I've been locked out of my Instagram, and I've been trying to get in touch with Meta, and I've had no help. And I was hacked, and I think, and all the messages keep coming back in Turkish, so it's very weird. So I haven't got access to some of the people that I keep in touch with, old colleagues and artists that I collaborated with. I would keep in touch via Instagram, but I'm locked out, so I don't know what's happening with him or where he is, and I can't use my Instagram. So, but yeah, I remember when we did the show, the pyramids in 2000. That was an incredible experience because it was something like 100,000 people, and the stage. It was the biggest stage I have ever been on, and the night that, and we'd been rehearsing for a few weeks on site, and there was more than 2,000 people working behind the scenes because it was huge. It was an enormous area to do the performances. Like there was the stage, which was, it looked like it was over 200 meters long, but it was because it had a lot of equipment on it, and then there was performances going on in the desert itself with that had amazing light shows, and it all worked really well up until the midnight of 2000, when because the pyramids had projections of these amazing projections of all the ancient Egyptian stuff and beautiful imagery that had been designed to project onto the pyramids, and at midnight, just after midnight, this mist descended, which was very unusual because usually that doesn't happen, and it was just after midnight. This mist descended, so you couldn't see the projections on the for a while. You couldn't see them. I mean, it didn't last all night, but when it happened, it was very, very mysterious. but there was an atmosphere in the air. I remember it was very exhilarating that so many people together, and everybody was really excited, and there was this air, this feeling of optimism in the air, and it was. I think I'll never forget that night, because it was electric. There was this electricity in the air, and yeah, it was quite incredible. But at one point, the president he sent a message down to Jean-Michel Jarre backstage, just saying, "I can't see the projections. I can't," because, and he said, "Well, this is an act of God. I can't really do anything about it."
Yeah.
So it was a very strange night.
I have to say that I think I'm in touch with Jean-Michel, assistant and promoter. So I will send your agent an email where you can contact him.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that will be, hopefully you can, the two of you. And I think I'm going to be interviewing him soon, but he's always busy.
Yeah,
going from one city to another, doing this, a press conference here. Everybody.
Yeah, he's always busy. Yeah, well, send him my best regards.
Well, and I will, as I say, I will send your assistant, Jean-Michel's manager, so you can talk to him directly, because I definitely want to do an interview with him. I was reading that your music has been used in a number of soundtracks as well, right? Is that correct?
My music had been what?
Had been used in several soundtracks.
Oh yeah,
as well.
Yeah.
And video games as well. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a video games, Grand Theft Auto. It was used on one of the Grand Theft Autos, and also it was used in Sex and the City. I think it was Sex and the City, either Sex and the City 1 or Sex and the City 2, the feature film, where they go to Saudi Arabia or Dubai or something, the girls, and and it was used. One of my tracks was used on that. Yes, I've had various songs and tracks used on various films. And I also did a collaboration with Harry Gregson Williams, the film composer, on the film Kingdom of Heaven. We wrote a song called The Light of Light, The Light of Life, Light of Life, Ibn al-Reprise, it was called. And it was one of the end titles themes to Kingdom of Heaven, and I know that I had a lot of love on that song, especially from people in the Middle East, because there are some words that are very spiritual, they're slightly religious, because the word Allah is mentioned, but in a spiritual way. So yeah, we did that for that song. We wrote this song for that, and that was another film. Yeah, I've done quite a few, and then the Hulk. I was I think it was the first film of the Hulk, with Bruce, the actor Bruce. I can't remember his name. Bruce Banner. But I sung on that film as well. I can't remember all of them because there's been so many.
Well, you're very famous. Yeah, that's why you have to remember. In the 2007, you ended up collaborated with Belinda Carlisle as well, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you look back sometime in your life and you say, well, for a boarding school, I did that. You have you were, like 20 different albums with a lot of different people, different rhythm section, East, West, Arabic, Latin, jazz, electronic.
Mhm.
My God, man. That's
Yeah,
amazing, man.
I know. I think if I start to think about it too much, my head might explode. I mean, I guess it's been many years that I've been in music. Yeah, I can't really imagine doing anything else, you know. And I think for me, the role of an artist, or the journey of an artist, is to just keep trying different things, trying to stay open-minded, and um, and because you always learn, and hopefully you learn wisdom from staying open, trying to stay in the light, and trying to stay optimistic, and finding different ways of expressing things in music. Because I do feel that, when we're depressed or feeling really down about what's happening in the world, which I have to say has happened a lot for me lately, one of the things that can lift my spirits, probably more than a lot of other things, is music. When you hear something that gives you, that makes your skin tingle, it gives you some joy, and it helps you to see things from another angle, to see that maybe all is not lost. And so music is very, very powerful. It's one of the most powerful things. So to help you overcome sadness and hard times.
I got you. And yeah, so in 2013, you end up releasing a live album. I think it's called Live in Toulouse.
Yeah.
That's it. That is what was, because I think that's the only album that you have recorded, out of a live event. Is a possibility to do a follow up of that, or because that's a
Yeah,
great
well,
album actually. So
yeah, and it was with an orchestra, and
yeah,
and actually it was a great experience to work with an orchestra, and it was great that it was live too. I would say that the nearest thing that we have to that, which we're actually working on now. Last year we recorded a classical project with the BBC Concert Orchestra, a fantastic orchestra in Maghrebain. We recorded the music, and what it was is that a couple of years ago, in 2019, Sammy and I had composed the music to a contemporary dance, a contemporary ballet called Odyssey. And we were on tour with this because Sammy and I were in the contemporary dance. We were interacting with the dancers. It was almost like a contemporary dance opera, because we were doing the music live. I mean, some of it was on backing, but Sammy and I was singing live. Sammy was playing violin live. And so it was Arabic influenced music on contemporary classical and also contemporary electronic. And then my manager, Shalima, she was in touch with the BBC Concert Orchestra because she was working with another artist, Sekou Keita, the kora player, and he was doing an album with them. So she proposed for us to do an album of this contemporary dance music. So it was rearranged. Sammy and another arranger called David Mantovani they rearranged this music from the contemporary dance. We called it Odysseia, changed the title Odysseia, and we changed some of the title tracks because they're reinventions of those tracks, the tunes that were used for the contemporary dance. And so then we recorded with the orchestra, and we're in the process of editing and then re-recording some of the violin and the vocals on that. And it's going to be an incredibly beautiful album. I mean, it's because the BBC orchestra are fantastic, and it has the Arabic elements, but it also has a classical Western orchestral elements, and it's really a fusion. Some of it is very cinematic. It sounds like film music, and some of it is very very emotional, very lyrical, and I can't wait for that project to be finished. So that will be the next album that is similar to Live Interludes in that the orchestra was recorded live, but then we're adding our parts separately because the room we didn't have enough separation to have the violin, the solo violin, the solo vocals. We couldn't do that all in the same room. So it's with an orchestra, the BBC orchestra, and we're hoping to develop that and release that as an album. And also we hope to tour with it with orchestras, with different orchestras. The BBC orchestra we'd love to do first, and then we'll see if there's other orchestras that we can send the scores to and then perform that live. And that will be called Odysseia.
For 2025, for next year?
Well, if it's not 2025, it'll be 2026.
Right. The album first need to be released, and then promotion behind the scene, and then approach different symphonic orchestra around the world that are interested and be participant on that particular project. Good for you.
And it's a bigger orchestra than Live Interludes. It's about 65 piece orchestra, so it's pretty big.
Yeah. Good for you, man. Unbelievable. The last two albums, I want to concentrate on this. Inner and the Outer. It's an emotional contemplative journey. You know, it manifests fear, mistrust, anger, confusion. It's great. Like we talked before, yeah, right? It's easy for you to put yourself out there because as a musician, as a composer, you need to open up. You need to dig deep within yourself, right? And express the way you're feeling, your emotion, your anger, your frustration. And sometimes I think it's good. It's good to look deep within yourself, right? And open up, face the mirror, right? Look yourself in the mirror. And sometimes it's not good to open up because you get a lot of criticism, and you post something in Twitter. I'm not into social media at all. I don't like it, but there's always going to be people, no matter what you do, no matter what you say. Hey, why are you tweeting this? Why are you saying this? Yeah, blah, 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 blah. How, on one hand, you want to express yourself and you have all the right to express yourself. On the other hand, the world will criticize you, no matter what you do, So what's the balance? How you manage that? It's a difficult question, I think.
Yeah, because I'm not always aware that we're managing very well, actually. Sometimes, like for so there was that was all around the COVID time, and and I had a particular hard time with trusting the governments at that time, and trust, you know, the whole thing with mandating a vaccine, which was for me an experimental gene sequencer. It's not what I could call a vaccine. So I had a lot of fear and mistrust with all that was going on at the time, and also, you know, we were stuck at home. You know, musicians need to be able to collaborate with other musicians, so we did it from a distance. Obviously, we did it remotely, so that was okay. But it was hard to. It took time to get it together, because when you're doing things long distance, you know, people, you have to send things back and forth, and so it was. And at the time, I was trying to find a way to keep myself grounded and calm, and it was difficult. So that's why the Inner Dimension, which was the meditational track, that came about through trying to find ways of meditating in a way. And also I found that during that period you kind of disagree with a lot of people, so finding balance is not always. Sometimes there are days when you don't have any balance. You're arguing with everybody. You're arguing with the musicians that you're working with, and then you have to find a way to go and find an inner peace, which was what Inner Dimension was about. Inner Dimension was about trying to find inner peace by whatever means necessary, whether that's kind of meditation or kind of pujas or prayers or breathing exercises. I found that doing the yoga breathing exercises, Kriya breathing exercises, that helped to calm me down. I have to really calm my nerves down when I'm feeling an imbalance due to outside influences that I cannot control. So I think that the Inner and the Outer was a reflection of some of that. Yeah, not all of the tracks. I mean, Inner Sunset was kind of very summery. It was about sort of, we managed to, during that time when we were all locked, we managed to go to Spain for a break, and the restrictions were still there, but you could go to the beach and stuff like that. But you know, you had to kind of, there were rules you had to follow. So, but it was nice to get out, and I think that Inner Sunset, which was a very summery kind of feeling, it had a remix vibe about it. I think that was very kind of chilled and breezy and everything. And then, you know, there was the Outer was more about, you know, what's behind what's going on, who's controlling everything. The track The Outer, that was more about the dystopia that seems to be ever present. So yeah, it was an interesting time to make an album.
Yeah, it's a great album, by the way. I really enjoy that. You know, it's.
Oh, thank you.
I'm happy that you put it together. In a way, you know, your life has been a combination of audacity, ambition, continuous musical exploration, trying this, trying that. What's the motivation for you to keep going? I mean, right? You have mental blocks, and sometimes it's, like you say before, is you are stuck. It's hard to, you know, you're working a project on a track, and then you need to let it go for some hours or a day, and then come back. What's the motivation in you to keep going and keep on releasing music and keep on releasing albums and so on?
I think it's
or
just
you have
that
no choice.
Well, it's a combination of not really having a choice. I mean, you know, it's I don't know what else I would do in life, but so there is that. It's like I kind of have to do it to you know, to keep a sense of function in my life. But it's not just that. It's because I think that I still have some things that I want to express. I think I still have some things to say. I mean, sometimes I think I've only got maybe 4 albums left in me, you know, and other times I think, oh no, I have a little, maybe more. But I definitely have 3 or 4 albums left that I want to do. That I like this one that we're working on now, the electronic one, Odysseia, which is the BBC Concert Orchestra album, which I told you about. There's another album that I would like to make, which is more, I'd kind of like to make an album of very, very meditational, very still music, stuff to go to sleep to meditate to do yoga to. I'd like to do an album like that. Yeah, I have a few more things that I think I can deliver musically. So I guess that's the motivation. Some days I don't have any. Some days I just don't. But you know, on my best days, I feel like I still have some things to say, some things to express.
Good for you. Good for you. In the past, you worked with, you collaborated with Peter Gabriel as well. Is something that you would like to do? I mean, you, as you go in a different period of your life, you look back and say, man, I wish I had the opportunity to work with that person or that person. It's still at your level. You're a very famous lady. Is it hard to reach out to people, to get a hold of people, to collaborate with people? Because every musician is doing their own, right? So how you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. There's actually, with Peter Gabriel, we've known of each other, and I met him back in the 90s. So with the WOMAD festival and the Real World Festival, right? Yeah, and then when Real World would do these events where they'd bring all these musicians together. So I've known him for a long time, not closely, but we've met many times, and he was always such a nice guy to work with. He's very easygoing, you know, and lovely guy to work with in the studio. Very, very gentle guy, very kind. So yeah, and it was nice to be involved on the big Blue Ball, I think it was called, the project. Yeah. And and when it comes to collaborating with, having desires or dreams of working with other musicians, I still have ideas about working with people. Actually, there's some amazing artists coming out of the Middle East right now. Yeah. And it all there was an explosion of new music coming out of Egypt. Actually, during COVID, it went sort of exponential. It was all simmering under the hood for the last sort of 10 years, but there's these new rappers and new artists and some really inspiring stuff going on. And then there's other artists from Lebanon, some that we've known of each other for a long time. There's an amazing musician called Zaid Hamdan, who is he's quite iconic in Lebanon, and he does a lot of work in France because he's known in France. And you should really look at his work. He's recently did a project called Zaid and the Wings, and he works with a lot of different singers. And then he's got a project called Bedouin Burger, amazing project. We were supposed to meet in the south, in Aix-en-Provence. We just got back from London, and I was going to drive down there, and Sammy and I were going to meet Zaid, because I'd really like to do a project with him at some point, because we've known each other for 20 years, you know, and and we've always had a lot of respect for each other, and we really wanted to meet. But I got ill. I got a virus. I think I caught it on the plane coming back. So I wasn't in a fit state to drive 8 hours down to Aix-en-Provence to meet him, and he was doing a show with this project Bedouin Burger with a brilliant singer, and I really wanted to meet them, and it just didn't happen. So and I texted him and I said, I really wanted to meet you. And he said, he says, the universe is conspiring against us. So I said, well, we're just going to have to find another time. So I really, really would love to meet him and do something with him. But also there's these other artists in Egypt. There's an amazing rapper who is called Wiggs, and he's taken the Middle East by storm because
really,
but because his words are like Shakespeare. He's unprecedented. No one has been able to make to advance the language in terms of songs, but he does it mainly with the rap. But his command of the Arabic language is extraordinary, that even scholars are talking about his lyrics. He is prophetic in his lyrics. He's just extraordinary in his way with words, that everyone talks about him. And he's only 24, and he's a beautiful soul. And he's extremely inspiring. I would love to work with him. Then there's a host of others. There's a guy who's older than the new rappers on the block, called Abi Yusuf, and he's one of the predecessors, because he started maybe 15 years ago or something, and he started all the rap, but he's now, you know, he's still very, very present. He does amazing stuff. And I love the way that they use Arabic rhythms, but electronically, because it reminds me of how I started using the Arabic rhythms back in the 90s, but electronically. So you're not always using Arabic percussion, you're using the electronic snare, bass drum and snare to express the beats in the Arabic rhythm, and that's what they're doing. But they're using a lot of Arabic rhythms to do that, and then they're rapping around, and they use some R&B elements as well. But their rap is not like American rap. They've really assimilated their own style. And then there's a guy who's half German, half English, called Marwan Musa. And he's like the Egyptian Eminem. Yeah, he's the Egyptian Eminem. He's just extraordinary. So yeah, I would love to reach out to them, but they are huge. I mean, they on YouTube now, because all of these are the YouTube generation, and they're getting something like 180 million hits. And so when you go onto their Instagram to send a message, it's not handled by them, it's handled by some young assistant, so a lot of it just gets lost. So it's very difficult to get in touch with these people and go, hey, I've been doing this stuff like for the last 25, 30 years. And so I have I wouldn't know where to start to try and get in touch with them. But yeah, there are artists and musicians that I would still love to meet up with and try and collaborate with. But Zaid Hamdan, the first guy I told you about, the Lebanese, because he's been around nearly as long as I have. So and his stuff, he's a cool dude.
I need to check him out. I need to find him.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for new musician, and new ways from different countries, different languages expressing music in different way, and from all the jazz, rock, electronic music. I have interviewed a lot of people in the indie world and jazz and rock and electronic music, many, and I'm always looking for new people. So hopefully, I will go back or I can ping your assistant to see if she can send me the name so I can look them up and try to. And if I get in touch with, I will send you away. So maybe one day we'll do a meeting with all of them.
Yeah. Jenny will send you all the links.
All the name. Your latest album is called Strange Days. It's a masterpiece. It's a master. I really like. It's very. I mean, you're going from this to there. You come back, and good for you. What was the vision of creating that particular album? More jazzy.
Well, so the album before that was an album that I had done in the sort of slightly jazz funk style with a trumpet player who's also a composer in France called Ibrahim Malouf. I just need to go and get some water.
Get a glass of water. Yeah, I will pause it.
Yeah, so I'd done this album with Ibrahim Malouf, who produced it. I think that was in 2015, and it was called Myriad Road.
Good.
Wow, I'd nearly forgotten what that album was called. I've done so many albums. So it was called Myriad Road, and it was released by Universal France in 2015. And it was a sort of a kind of an introduction into a kind of slightly jazz, slightly funk. I think it had a slightly 70s feel in some of the tracks. And it featured Ibrahim Malouf, who's a very famous trumpeter in France. He's a star here in France, and we did this album. I toured that a couple of years, but it was a lovely album, but it didn't go deep into much of the bebop language of jazz or harmonic changes. It was in a way superficial, because Ibrahim's always liked to be as, he likes to do things in a simplistic way, because he likes to he always says that he likes to not put himself above his listener. He likes to do things that the listener will like. He's very much a commercial type of writer. That's his thing, and he does it very well. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper. Now that I'd tasted what that could be like, I thought, well, I'd actually like to explore that further. So, and because my partner Sammy, my writing partner Sammy Bichet, he was very much he grew up with jazz, so he knows about the changes. He knows about bebop. He basically said, okay, well, you need to listen to a lot of the jazz greats like Coltrane and Charlie Parker and all the Miles Davis, obviously. And so he kind of we had a few days where we were just listening to a lot of jazz and wondering how we could find a way to make a sort of a meeting place between real jazz and Arabic music without it being contrived, so that there's quarter tones, because you can't harmonize quarter tones quarter tone scales. It's very difficult. So you have to find a sort of ways to make them interact and not clash. And Sammy's very good at doing that. He's a natural because he's very in touch with his Egyptian side, and and his mother was English and loved jazz. His father loved jazz. He's grown up with jazz, so it's in his blood. So then we just started to write some words, and and Sammy would play around with the piano with some jazz chords. He's very good with all the jazz chords and all of that. So, and we had an excellent band who were already jazz musicians, jazz musicians that are very, very well respected in London. High caliber jazz musicians like Alcyone Mick, piano player, a jazz drummer called Asaf Sirkis, who's touring with Soft Machine now. I mean, he's very much in demand. Laurie Lowe, another amazing jazz drummer. We had amazing jazz musicians. This trumpet player called Hayden Powell, who's English but grew up in Norway and studied over there jazz. And they're just the caliber of musicianship to go really deep into jazz, so that there could be some elements of bebop on the album, and then have this very strong Arabic influence with quarter tones, mixing with harmonies and changes. It was a real challenge for me because I had to do a lot of learning, but it felt right for the time, and the subject matter was all about what's going on in the world just before COVID. It was, some of the journalists that interviewed me, they said, "How did you know what was going to happen?" I said, "I didn't. It was just we were writing about the corruption of the world, and it's in that album, but it's yeah."
At your level, you have sold billions of records, I think, and is it still difficult to make a living in music? I mean, I'm not talking about rich like Kate Bush or Peter Gabriel, all those people, but the day-to-day, pay your bill, have a house, a car, or you are forced to keep on releasing album and keep on touring because selling records and CDs.
Yeah.
The sales are going down way. So, and Spotify doesn't pay anything.
Yeah.
Bandcamp is much better because you get like 90 cents of a dollar, right? It's still difficult to make, in general term, to make a living.
I think it's more difficult. I think it's more difficult than ever it was. And the streaming services don't help. I mean, it's like all the things that become corporate. They just rip you off, man. I mean, if unless you're getting millions and millions of streams, the money that you get won't even buy a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Wow.
So you can't base your life around the streaming, because it just isn't worth anything. So it's very, very difficult, and it can be very demoralizing. So the only thing that you can do really is you have to keep releasing music, and because the promoters will only book you for gigs if you have
new material, right?
Material, which is why we're actually late on delivering an album, because you also get caught in the cycles of stress of, we've got to deliver an album, otherwise if we don't deliver an album, then we don't have anything to promote, then we can't get booked to gigs, and then we can't earn a living, because most of it is about doing the gigs.
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah.
and getting and having a turnover of doing gigs, so that
Yeah.
and also that's where you can sell your records and everything, because I mean, I have to say that Bandcamp is one of the most wonderful organizations out there that support artists. It's one of the very few that really
But fair to the artist, right? Yeah.
yeah, they are real friends to the artists.
Yeah.
Spotify, are corrupt and criminal, to be honest. and,
Yeah,
and
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Google as well. It's just they don't. I sometimes I wonder if in a few years whether we're really going to have any real credible art out there, because there's just no incentive for artists to continue in a system that doesn't support us and help us, because a lot of people, they couldn't continue doing music. They had to go and get other jobs, and eventually what happens is they'll keep doing music as a hobby, and eventually they don't even have the time to do that, because they're working in a bank, or they're working in a bar, or they're working doing other things that don't give you time to do music anymore. And so and also the other thing I feel, and this is also part of the system not working anymore with education and stuff like that, because there's more of a divide between the rich and poor. So it seems to me that it's becoming, a rich man's hobby is to be able to study music. Only rich kids from rich backgrounds who can still live with their parents, and they can go to a university and study music, where they're living with their parents, so they don't have to think about that. So it's almost like it's for the privilege. Music is now, to study music, to be able to learn an instrument professionally and go and be a professional music is a privilege for the rich, and it's going to be harder and harder for the poor. I mean, but then you have the contradiction in that there are young kids who are from very poor backgrounds, like what's happening in Egypt. Some of these young rappers, they're from very, very poor backgrounds. But what's happening in Egypt is it's almost like the music scene is catching up with what happened here in the rap scene, say 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So it's different, because it's the Middle East, and it's it's not the same trajectory. So it's a very different one. So you can come from a poor background, and and you can make music with digitally and have a hit, but pop music, there's still a way for pop music to get through, but they're tied into Google and Spotify to promote their stuff. And a lot of these young Gen Z artists, these singers and stuff, I don't think they really realize how badly they're being ripped off by Google and Spotify, because if they grow up with the mobile phone, they make music on their mobile phone, they go onto the subscriptions, and everything you have to do a subscription through, to have these little apps that do this and do that musically and stuff. So they're all subscribed to that, and they've grown up with that. So for them, they've never known anything else. So they don't know that actually, it's the Spotify, they're not paying their musicians, because they're paying the shareholders. The fiduciary responsibility is such an anti. It's everything that's. I don't know how best to express this, but fiduciary responsibility with all these corporate entities like YouTube and Spotify, they only care about the shareholders, because that's the law. Because the law, because all these lawmakers, they change the law so that that was the most important thing, and that they can go to jail if they don't adhere to getting the shareholders sorted out. So that means that there's no room, there's no money left to pay musicians fairly or equally for the work that they're doing, and the same goes with Google. But if you're a Gen Z kid, you've grown up with that, you've never known any different. So for them, it's normal, and it's not normal. I don't know if I've explained that very well, but I think you know.
No, you do. No, I completely agree with you, right? Like you say, you have like 100,000 views and hit and a stream. Spotify, you get a check for $10, right? That's it. Or a cup of coffee, like you call it.
Yeah, you know,
it's a repo.
Sometimes it's a check for like $4, and you can't get a cup of coffee with that. So how can you pay your electricity bill or your gas bill if you're not getting enough revenue to? You can't.
Yeah.
It's not a living for a musician. So therefore, a musician has to be able to find ways of if you want to be a professional full-time musician, you have to find ways of being able to promote your music so that a promoter will then book you for a tour or for some shows, you know. But the other ways that some people do it is by being a YouTubing musician. So they're actually a YouTuber. They're a full-time YouTuber who use music as their platform to express themselves with, and some of them do quite well. But I think I remember seeing some interviews with Rick Beato. You know Rick Beato? Yeah. And he's talked a lot about those things where, you know, being a full-time YouTuber, it's a full-time job. So music is almost secondary because you also have to find people to film you, and a lot of them start by filming themselves, but it's a full-time job.
Right? Yeah.
I don't see where you have time to go on tour or or play live. So it's
Talking about touring, any possibility of you coming here to United States to tour with Sammy or with your band or with another different group?
Well, you know, my old group Transglobal Underground, they just came. They were in Detroit about a week ago. They did a small festival there. I wanted to come, but it wasn't possible to get everybody a visa. So because you have to have a work visa to do an official tour, and that's another thing is that America's made the visas much more expensive. So coming to do a tour or coming to just do a couple of gigs in America, and the visas are costing like, I don't know, $1,000 per musician. It's very, very difficult. The thing is, I've been longing to come back to America to do some gigs, you know, even if it was like, you know, 4 shows, New York, LA, you know,
DC. You need to come to DC.
Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to come to DC, but again, you have to find a promoter who can find the funding to pay the visas, the work visas, and it's a lot. I mean, I think the last time I was there to do a show was maybe 10 years ago, or maybe just over 10 years ago. But yeah, I would love to come back. I have to find a promoter who can sort it out. If you have any ideas of promoters that might be able to do it, let me know.
I know some names, and I know every venue here in DC because I go to a lot of concerts, right? So I will send your sister some names where you need to send an email, send like a CD or a link to your channel, and then try to arrange it. And then, unfortunately, with the visa, if you're a touring musician in the United States, you need to pay. And it's more than $1,000. I think it's more. It's like $2,000
more now, So we need some jazz festivals. Yeah, some jazz festivals where we could do Strange Days. That would be like some jazz, but you know, some contacts for jazz festivals, and if you know anyone who would
Yeah, I know. I will send your sister some names where people,
yeah.
you can get a hold of, and venues that you can email them directly and send a kind of
But
standard email.
is there anyone you know personally? Because obviously recommendations help, because sometimes
I do actually. I do, because I'm in
well,
touch
that
with so
might,
many musicians.
yeah, because introductions really help. Because I tell you what, sometimes when you cold call people and you send you send emails, you send CDs, you know,
That's what
I
happens.
have
Yeah,
done that. I don't get anything back. So you need like introductions and just saying, "Oh, I've interviewed
sure.
her lately." And
Yeah,
sort of say, "This artist is really great. You got to book her."
yeah, yeah. I will send a couple email this afternoon.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know a couple people that could help you out, landing gig in the United States. Not that
yeah,
easy, but we could try, right? But if
yeah.
you ever in DC, feel free to come to our house to dinner. You will have the best meal of your life, Latin food. So my wife is the best cook in the world, so we'll have Colombian food.
Oh, lovely. Great.
Yeah, and Chilean wine and Colombian coffee, bro.
Sounds amazing.
It was very nice talking to you, Natasha. I'm quite sure we'll do a follow-up interview on a part two, and you know, and good luck to you. I hope, you know, everything work out with the new album, the live album that you want to put together, and working
Yeah.
with the BBC hopefully next year. And if anything, if there is anything I can do to help you out, and you know, I'm here. You know how to get a hold of me. And your music is great. You have done a lot of great work in the world now, almost 20 albums, and you have toured everywhere, work with a lot of different people, different background, different genres, different religions, East, West, Arabic, jazz, electronic, pop, rock. And so if is there anything I can do to help you, just let me know.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank
Happy to
you.
help. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon, Natasha.
Yeah, you too. You too. Thanks a lot.
Bye, Natasha. No problem.
Bye bye.